tour guides. And I said, wow, if I ever live in Israel, that's what I want to be. And so that's what I did. We came to Israel and I saw an advertisement for the tour guide course. And so our first year, I'm not sure how I got accepted, but I did. I was accepted in the course. The course was in Hebrew in those days. Today they offer it in all sorts of languages. Back in 1991, they didn't. And so I kind of had to break my teeth in Hebrew. But I passed the course also and became a licensed. And I've been privileged to be a tour guide for the last, I guess, 31 years now. So that's my background. Okay, Marla, how we doing? Phil, good? That's me. And I'm privileged to be with you in Tarrytown today. Marla and Phil know that I actually have another connection. I grew up summers in Lake Mahopac. So often drove up the Sawmill and turned on the Taconic and up to Route 6. And so I've passed Tarrytown many. Hawthorne Circle, it's probably not far from you, right?
Oh,
Which is no longer Hawthorne. Yeah, it's no longer Hawthorne Circle, right? But I remember it as Hawthorne Circle. And it wasn't, right. We left the States. Anyway, so I'm pleased to be with you and pleased to take you on these journeys over the next couple of months around Israel through your Israel Committee, the TBA Israel Committee. And today, what we are going to be doing is visiting, rather appropriately, let's see if I can get the right PowerPoint up. Ta-da, here it is. Ta-da, okay. We are together going to be doing something in the city of Jerusalem. By the way, just as a show of hands, how many of you have not ever been to Israel? Any people here have never been? So it looks like most of you have been to Israel. Okay, great. Wonderful. So we're going to be visiting Jerusalem, but I'm wondering how many of you ever actually in Jerusalem walked on the walls, which is what we're going to be doing today. But I'd like to get to the walls with a little bit of an introduction, the introduction that I would give you if we were in Jerusalem together. So just kind of like fasten your seatbelts and put on your hats and pick up your water bottles, because we're about to take a tiyul, as they call it, and Temple Beth Abraham, welcome to Jerusalem. This is me. I'll talk about that at the end a little bit. Before we actually walk on the walls, a little bit about the view that we're seeing and how these walls came to be. Now, we're going to be watching videos. This is actually a video, but I took a still of it for the PowerPoint. We're going to be seeing some real videos a little bit later. The walls that we're looking at, which is the wall. Now, you know what? I knew I wanted to start differently because it's the week of Hanukkah. I'm going to come back to this picture in a minute. Right, it's the week of Hanukkah, right? So since it's the week of Hanukkah, let's talk about how it is.
Pesach.
Did I say Hanukkah? I'm looking at Haggadah. Where did I get Pesach, Hanukkah from? What around me could have clued Hanukkah? Was that like the dumbest move of the day? Okay, all right. Goodness me.
No, I think you wanted them to guess.
To guess, right? Yeah, all right.
No, not at all. I taught this to the kids this morning. They sang Mi Chamocha at the Red Sea, and
Okay.
Mi Chamocha B'Elim Adonai is Maccabi. There you go. There's the connection.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. You're right.
All good
right.
now.
Of course, we're talking Pesach, and this is the week of Pesach, and Pesach, I believe, is part of the amazing answer to the question of how we as a people have maintained our connection to a city that we were thrown out of and which was destroyed 2,000 years ago. Because if you think about it, it's rather remarkable that the Jewish people has held on tenaciously to our connection to the city of Jerusalem. So I want to begin just with two reminders, one of them from Pesach, and here we are, 3 versions of the Pesach Haggadah. And of course, the culmination of the Seder for all of us, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. We say it, our parents said it, our grandparents said it, our great-grandparents said it. I'm sure many of us have roots that go back to Europe. Our ancestors in Europe said it. And the generations of our families have been saying this and passing it on to us, the next generations, for 2,000 years. That's 100 generations probably, right? Where we have not lost our connection with the city of Jerusalem. It's the ending of every Passover Seder. I got the holiday right this time, right? It's the ending of every, say hi to Debbie, Deb. My wife, Debbie.
I don't see whatever.
You can say hello. Come on in. Then I'll move the screen to you. There you are. Hello. Hello, Debbie.
I can't see where I'm looking.
You're over here in the top corner.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Israel. And it's the week of Pesach.
Not Hanukkah? All right, good. So this has been literally part of our genetic material for the last 2,000 years, this Lashana Haba next year in Jerusalem. It's the ending of every Yom Kippur service. We know that. We culminate the Yom Kippur davening, the prayers on Yom Kippur with Lashana Haba Yerushalayim. We also have recited these words as well. It's from the book of Psalms. And this goes back to the beginning of that first exile by the waters of Babylon. So this is 586 BCE. This is even 500 years before the destruction by the Romans. So now we're back 2,500 years ago. And the verse, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget you, O Jerusalem, tishkach yemini, let my right hand forget her cunning, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I remember thee, not if I set Jerusalem above all my chiefest joy. Again, a psalm clearly written not by David, but written in the exile, the first exile. You know, we have never forgotten our connection with Jerusalem. And therefore, it's a great place to start our visit to Israel. It's a great place to start our virtual visit to Israel. And to that end, if I did this right, this might even be a song. Let's see if it comes up.
Welcome.
No, here we go. Okay. Let's see if we got it.
You didn't share your sound. Oh, yeah. Peter,
Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Wait. Hold it. You can't hear that, right?
correct.
I know. I got to share. Hold on. I'm sorry. I got to share. There we go. Got it. So I'm sure many of you have heard that melody. It's very frequently used at Jewish weddings. And you know that we've been singing If I Forget Jerusalem at Jewish weddings for 2,000 years also. So it's been pretty hard. No, I don't want to say the negative. It's a rather amazing phenomenon of our history that we probably uniquely among all peoples have been able to cling to this connection with a city that most of the people that said these words never saw, never even had a dream of ever being able to see. I mean, you know, my grandparents from Poland who made it to America probably never dreamed of seeing it with their own eyes. Indeed, I'm the first person in their extended family that actually did get to see Jerusalem with their own eyes. And I remember then, as I do now, that sense of carrying them with me on my shoulders on that first visit to Jerusalem, because they or their parents or their grandparents would have never seen what I was seeing. In any event, so today we're going to focus on Jerusalem, in particular, look at the walls. Now, when I'm here from this spot, which is, by the way, the Haas Promenade, we'll come back to that in just a few moments. From the Haas Promenade, I often ask people, are these walls old walls or new walls? I'm here with groups. I love to start tours in Israel with this spot. And if we've done other things first, then my first day in Jerusalem is this spot. And we're looking at the walls of the old city here in this panorama. Are these old walls or new walls? So that's kind of a trick question, because the answer is yes. Right? The answer is yes. Right, Phil? It's yes. Well, you know, on the one hand, these are pretty old walls. I mean, they were built in 1517, which means only 20 years after Columbus discovered America? That sounds like a long time ago by me, right? 1492, 1517, 25 years later. So these walls go back an awfully long time, 500 years. And yet in the history of Jerusalem, they're really fairly recent newcomers, because if we go back to the time of King David, for example, David is 1000 BCE, which is 3000 years ago, which means these walls are pretty young in terms of the evolution of Jerusalem and the growth of Jerusalem. And what I'd like to do today, we're going to walk on these walls in a little while. And I know Phil and Marla, I guess Phil has it all keyed up and ready to go when I say hit the play button, right? So we'll get there shortly. But I want to give you just a little bit of an introduction of how we got to these walls. And so in order to do that, let's look at some maps. Oops, where are we down here? Okay, so here we go. So 1000 BCE, I have a hunch that those of you who've been to Israel know that the original city of David, which you see in the right-hand map, is not even in the city of Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem today. So look at the black outline. That's the outline of the old city of Jerusalem. Again, you can see it on a contemporary map on the left-hand side. This is the old city. I can here, you know what? Here's the outline of the old city. Okay, this is the old city of today. And look where the city of David is. City of David is totally outside the walls of today. But that was indeed the city that was first conquered by King David from the Jebusites in 1000 BCE. The story is told in the second book of Samuel, chapter 5. And that is the original Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. Moving forward, David wants to build a temple to God, as you know. Let me clear the screen from all those other stuff. David wants to build the temple. You know that he's not permitted by Nathan the prophet, speaking on behalf of God, who says, you're a man of war. I don't want the temple built by a man of war. The temple is going to be built by King Solomon. Solomon in Hebrew is Shlomo. Shlomo is Shin Lamed Mem, Shalom. His very name connotes peace. And so the privilege of building the first temple on Mount Moriah goes not to David, but to his son Solomon. Why Mount Moriah? Because Jewish tradition, even here, attributed Mount Moriah as the spot of the biblical stories from 800 years even earlier, from 1800 BC, the story of the Akedah, of Abraham's bringing Isaac to be a sacrifice to God on Mount Moriah. And so by King Solomon's times, look at the map of Jerusalem. It's in brown on the right-hand side, encompassing a little piece of what's in the old city walls today, but still looking nothing like the city of Jerusalem's old city today. Any questions so far? You're all with me? Okay, so let's move forward in time. What happens over the next period of time, known as the First Temple period? So over time, the city expands, and in particular, it spans in the 700s to accommodate a huge influx of people from the north. What happened? So I don't want to teach a whole Jewish history course today, but you know, David and Solomon actually ruled over a united kingdom. After Solomon, the kingdom splits and the northern tribes separate, and they call themselves Israel under their own king. And that's, again, a whole separate story, not for today. And the southern kingdom becomes the kingdom of Judea. So we have two kingdoms with their own monarchy and their own government, all sometimes coexisting peacefully with each other, often not. The northern kingdom of Israel is destroyed by the Babylonians, actually by the Assyrians, led by Sancherib in around 730 BCE. And many of the refugees flocked to Jerusalem. The king of Jerusalem was King Hezekiah, has to expand the city. And look at the bottom now. Let's get a color that's even more prominent. Will the green show up? So the walls of the city now under King Hezekiah include the original Solomon's Jerusalem. I don't know if you know what, wait a minute, I can do this even better. Here's Solomon's Jerusalem, look at that, right? But now Hezekiah jumps into the hill on the other side from Mount Moriah to Mount Zion. And this is Jerusalem during King Hezekiah's time. And for those of you who know Jerusalem, this is the first time we see the area here known as today the Jewish Quarter incorporated in the walls. In those days, it's the upper city. This, by the way, is where the Herodian mansions are. If anybody's been to Jerusalem and visited the Herodian mansions underground, they're right about over here. They're part of the Hoi Polloi of Jerusalem during the last period of the Second Temple, as it turns out, but already became incorporated into Jerusalem during the First Temple period. And this is the Jerusalem, and these are the walls. And this is why, let me erase what's up here. Those of you who've been to Jerusalem and have seen what's called the Broad Wall in the middle of the Jewish Quarter, what's the wall of ancient Jerusalem doing in the middle of the Jewish Quarter? Because that's where Jerusalem ended during the period of Hezekiah and late First Temple times. So this is the wall that stood and is destroyed in 586 by the Babylonians. The Jews are carted off into exile. That exile lasts 70 years and we come back. In those 70 years, we have the Purim story. You know that, the 70 years of exile in Babylonia. This may be surprising to you, but most Jews remain in Babylonia when 70 years later they're given permission to come back. Ezra and Nehemiah, who lead, and Zerubbabel, who lead the people back, if you look in the book of Ezra, Ezra is scratching his head in disbelief that only 5% of the Jews are coming back from Babylon to Israel, and 95% are still remaining in Babylonia. After all, they're third generation Babylonians. And they built synagogues and they built schools, and they're now the grandchildren of the people that last saw Jerusalem. And they have their businesses, and they've invested in the JCC, and the building fund isn't even paid off yet. And life is quite nice. So Babylonian Jewry does not return to Israel. And Ezra returns with only 5% of the Jews that do come back, and finds himself running back and forth to Babylonia fundraising. And I'm kind of saying this in a modern genre, but that's exactly what happened 2,500 years ago when Jerusalem is rebuilt. You notice that it's rebuilt pretty much along the lines of late First Temple Jerusalem. That's not totally true. The original rebuilding in Second Temple times was much more like, was much more like the original Jerusalem of Solomon, with the Second Temple now rebuilt over here. Only later on did the city begin to expand and resemble its late First Temple size. And this is now the Jerusalem of the Hanukkah story, which is around 176 BCE. And it still does not look like Jerusalem today, right? Which is the black lines. So we're not at the old city yet, are we? Okay, on we go. Okay. So let's go to the end of the Second Temple period and a king called King Herod. I put in parentheses Herod the Great. Maybe we'll have a chance to relate to Herod the Great in another one of our talks. I would like to suggest that even though he's called Herod the Great, there are others that are greater. Every college campus has Hillel houses, not Herod houses, and there's a reason for that. Okay, but again, that's not for today. Why we want to emulate the values of Hillel. And we look at Herod perhaps as a great builder and a great ruler, and one who had no unemployment and had massive building. I mean, he built Masada and Caesarea, and the Second Temple was completely rebuilt by him. He built the cave of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron. So he was a great builder and possibly did great things for our people, but was very much a Roman vassal. And during Herod, look how the city begins to expand even more. We now have a new wall called the second wall being added on, which is this piece up here. See, it's a second wall. And for the first time in this northern side, we begin to see Jerusalem kind of looking like it does today. All right. You notice, by the way, that I circled in blue this section up here on the upper left. The reason it became the Christian quarter is rather interesting, because it's outside the walls during the period of Jesus and the crucifixion. And so you find that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which marks the place of the crucifixion and the burial and resurrection according to Christian theology, is here outside the walls, which makes sense. The Romans were not executing people inside the city. Burials were not taking place inside the city. Only as the city expanded and the black walls came into place, and we'll see that in a couple of slides, do we now find the Christian quarter being incorporated into the city. And that's today where the Christian quarter is. This blue section is the Christian quarter around the holy spots of Christianity in the city of Jerusalem. But it's very much outside the city walls in late Second Temple times and the time of Jesus himself. Moving on. Okay, I'm kind of skipping very quickly through. You know that, let me go back a section actually. The temple is destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. I'm sure all of you know that the disruption takes place on the same day in the Jewish calendar as the first temple was destroyed over 500 years earlier. Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which for us is today a day of national mourning, a day of religious observance commemorating that destruction twice in our history, and other events also that happened on that day. These are the walls that are destroyed. Jerusalem is rebuilt by the Romans, and the Roman Empire essentially is in control for about 300 years. It's primarily a pagan empire. Christianity is not yet taking hold as the religion of the empire until the 4th century. And then the Roman Empire all of a sudden takes on a new identity. It loses its pagan observances and becomes the Byzantine Empire, the rise of early Christianity. And look at the map of Jerusalem now. And now for the first time, I begin to see the walls of the city really coming closer to what they are today. All right, whoops, there should be a line, not a, let's see if I can get back to that. Here we go. All right, so you notice this is pretty much along the lines of today, although it still extended down to the south. This is the original city of David, all right? And this was Jerusalem. By the way, this might be a good map to show you something. I'm going to show it to you on the right-hand side. For those of you familiar with Jerusalem, let me change colors. This is so much fun. I've learned so much this year, right? Marla, we've become like incredible experts in Zoom and PowerPoints and doing all this stuff. So this is rather interesting. There's a valley here. You notice it says Kidron Valley. All right. There's an outer valley over here. I kind of cut off when I duplicated this piece, but this is the Hinnom Valley, which goes like this. And there's a valley up the middle. Now, those who've been to Jerusalem know this. If the Jewish quarter is out over here, you have to walk down all those steps to the Western Wall. And then today it's the Dome of the Rock, or where the temple stood, is up another hill. So there's a valley in the middle. Does that look like a Hebrew letter? Yeah, it should look like the letter Shin. And that's what the Kabbalah says, that God chose for his holy city a city in which the topography of the land has the first letter of one of God's names, Shaddai. And so from the air, it really does look like a Shin, even though there's been so much construction, it's almost hard to discern all the valleys today. But there are 3 very distinct valleys, and the city of Jerusalem is built on the letter Shin, representing God's name, at least according to the mystics of the Kabbalah. In any event, this is Jerusalem of the 4th century on the left-hand side. Islam comes upon the scene only in the 7th century. And then finally, only in the 11th century, in the very end of the 11th century, essentially the 12th century, do we have the Crusaders rebuilding the city along the lines that we see today. And there are the 2 maps superimposed. That's the right-hand map. This is the Jerusalem of the Crusaders. Now, those walls are destroyed. They are rebuilt by the Turks only in 1516, 1517. And the walls we see today, as I said at the beginning, are the walls of the Turks, only built yesterday, 500 years ago, a mere yesterday, compared to David, who was 3,000 years ago. All right. Did I have another slide after this? Yeah. There we go. Of course. What is Beth Abraham doing today? So that's all introduction. So here we are. This is the on the right-hand side, the map once again, but I've identified the divisions within the city today, the 4 quarters of the old city. They are quarters like in New Orleans. They're not geometric slices of a pizza pie that are each 1/4 of the area, but they are 4 sections of the city, each based on some spots within the city that make it of religious significance to them. We discussed a few moments ago the significance of the Christian quarter, right? This is where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is. This is where Christianity identifies events in the life of Jesus. What's called the Via Dolorosa, which is Jesus's final path from the Mount of Olives, which is out over here, is along here somewhere, but culminates inside the Christian quarter today. So that's the Christian quarter. The Armenian quarter, because about a century ago, after the Armenian massacres, a large number of Armenians managed to settle in this corner of the city, which is the southwestern side of the city. The Muslim quarter developed because it is closest to one of Islam's holy shrines, the Dome of the Rock. And the Jewish quarter, because over time, with all the building in Jerusalem and all the changes that were taking place, one section of wall remained exposed throughout all the ages. And that's the section that we call the Western Wall, which is right over here. And so the Jewish quarter developed around the Western Wall, which you see in the bottom right-hand picture. So what are we going to be doing today? Okay, we are shortly, first I'm going to take a perspective from what's called the Has Promenade, and we're going to be looking, as we saw in my first slide, at this section of wall over here. Actually, I'm in the wrong, hold on a second. Here we go. We're going to be looking from a distance at this section of wall over here. And then we are going to, I think I put into the next slide, did I? If not, no, that was the last one. Okay. We are going to be mounting these walls at the Citadel of David, which is where the yellow circle is in the right-hand slide, and walking south along the walls together, and then taking a turn east and walking along this section of wall. We are going to be walking the ramparts of the walls of the old city. It's also possible, by the way, to mount over here and go in this direction all the way around here. That's perhaps for another trip. But today, the video that we're going to be seeing is the video that is now in red, not this last piece I put up, but the piece on the bottom. So here we go. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to share something else with you. Now I had these all up. Let me just find it. Right here it is. Okay, there we go. So this is where we are, and this is where we're beginning our walk today, or at least our view today, called the Has Promenade. It is this magnificent panorama. There's Debbie. This was filmed probably back in August. Looking out over this magnificent panorama, looking out towards the walls of the city. And you see here in this panel, some of the things that are in view. I meant to stop it like it just at the end. Let me see if I can catch it just before it ends. Okay, yeah. So we're looking north. The walls of the old city are kind of like hidden, by the way, back in the upper left-hand corner. They're not in this picture. They're back in more over here. Okay, I'll show that to you in the next picture. But that's where we're going to be looking today. And this is a magnificent view over the city. Let's get to the other view. How do we do that? I do it by this. I need this, and I need that, and I need, and I need this. Okay, here we go. And this is what we started with. Again, just a beautiful panorama. The walls of the old city now over here, quite easily in view. This is the section we're going to be walking on. Actually, not that far. We're going to be going just about to over here. Before I leave this picture, let me just stop the video. Where is the city of David? Anybody? So the city of David is actually right over here. Whoop. No, I want to go back. Why are you moving forward?
The towers of Mount Scopus and the Mount of Olives.
Okay, this is fine. The city of David is right over here. That's that original piece of Jerusalem. You can see how it kind of grew this way, northward, eventually to encompass the temple. Then it grew around the Jewish quarter like this. And so from this spot, we have a wonderful place to also go through the maps that I just went through and talk about the evolving size of the city of Jerusalem and its walls. Maybe the one last thing I'm going to relate to here before we jump to the video, so Phil, get ready for the push button, is why was this city located here to begin with? And that's because there's one spring in the area. It's right over here. It is called the Gihon Spring. And indeed, the Jebusites who built the city originally, oh, you know what? I don't have to do that. I forgot. I can do something else. I can do this because I'm getting good at this, right? Much better, right? well, can't see it, but because the color isn't so good, but it was a bad choice of colors. But the Jebusites who built here originally built next to water. And obviously that was a critical spot in the location of cities in ancient times. And another story, which we won't go into today, David is able to take advantage of the water system and conquer the city from the Canaanite Jebusites. But what I'd like to do today now is take you on a walk with me along the ramparts of the old city walls. And I'm going to stop my screen share therefore, and I'm going to put Phil back into the driver's seat. And Phil, let's show the Ramparts video.
Okay. Hi, today and there's no sound.
We did hear the sound.
Oh, it's interesting. I heard
Oh,
the
you do?
sound.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But we don't have the screen now. Or the sound. I don't
So
share it.
Phil,
Start again.
while you're working on that, oh, okay.
Hi, today we are going to be doing something super exciting. We are standing outside the Jaffa Gate of the old city, and we're going to be walking on the ramparts, the walls of the old city, the walls that were built by the Turks 500 years ago, and getting an amazing perspective both into the city and outside the city from the top of the walls.
I hear it fine.
My name is Peter Abelow.
Hi, I'm Ani Schiffmiller.
Hi, I'm Donnie Abelow.
We are tour guides and Israel educators.
And each week, one of us, or one of our colleagues, will be presenting
A real taste of Israel as we take you with us on our journey around the country.
Israel is beautiful.
So here we go. The entrance today is via the moat around the Citadel of David, which is for another trip. It has nothing to do with David. Maybe we'll refer to it a little bit up on top. So follow me, please, as we ascend to the walls. As we go in, we first pass by this beautiful model of the Migdal David, David's Tower, David's Citadel as it looks today. The site of a wonderful, wonderful sound and light show on beautiful evenings with a laser presentation against the walls. This building has remnants in the Crusader period and other periods of history. We're walking now through the moat, and this is on our way to the entrance to the ramparts. So here we are. We're about to go up the stairs to the ramparts. But there's another possibility which will be the subject of another one of our trips in a few weeks, and that's instead of going up, going down to some of the most exciting, newest discoveries from ancient Jerusalem, something called the Kishilah. So come back in a few weeks and we will go down. But today, come on along, we're going up. Okay, I'm ready, here we go. How you doing? And here we are. And look at the spectacular view of Jerusalem. On the horizon, directly across from us, the King David Hotel on King David Street, and further over with the red roofs, the neighborhood of Yemin Moshe. Now I want you to appreciate a little bit of modern history. Who sat on these walls from 1948 until the liberation of Jerusalem in 1967? The Jordanians. Now remember, these walls were built by the Turks, but as a result of the War of Independence, when the old city was lost, the Jordanians sat here and had the view that we now have over the new city of Jerusalem. There's a famous scene from the veranda, the porch of the King David Hotel, looking this way in the movie Exodus, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But Only a short time after the Exodus story, when this is now in Jordanian hands, people sitting on the terrace were literally under the noses of the Jordanian guns, the soldiers that were sitting up here looking over the valley in between. Yemin Moshe was destroyed in the War of Independence, totally decimated, not to be rebuilt until after 1967. And this is the view that Jordan had over Israel for those 19 years of Jordanian occupation in the Old City. So this is rather interesting. It's a technique which was used extensively by the Crusaders throughout Europe and here in the land of Israel. And in this case was duplicated by the Turks when they built these walls some 500 years after the Crusaders, who were here in the 12th century. Tax people, it's called a loophole. Actually, it's a very narrow opening for an archer to be able to stay here and aim his bow and arrow or his crossbow with a bit of freedom of movement, but from the outside, all that the opposing archer had was this very narrow slit. You kind of had to be Robin Hood to be able to hit from the outside. And this, as I said, was used extensively in these walls as we walk along. So here's a secret. I hate heights, and I hate narrow staircases, and I am so thankful that the Israeli authorities who have opened this as a tourist site have put in these railings for me, because I would not have wanted to be a Turkish soldier on these walls 500 years ago, or a Jordanian soldier on these walls 70 years ago. Anyway, here we go. Another loophole. Well, how's everybody doing? We have reached a very important spot on the walls. This is the southwest corner of the walls. We're going to spend a few moments here, and there are three things that I would like to point out from here. Number one, it takes us back to King Herod's time. Number two, from modern times, the War of Independence, 1948. And number three, also from the same time period, a story out of the Holocaust and World War II. So historians and archaeologists for years believed that King Herod, the famous king who built the walls around today is the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, the king during the late Second Temple period in the land of Israel, had a magnificent palace here at this site in what today is the Old City. We didn't know it until recent times, and now archaeologists have found it. We've discovered remnants of the palace, and we are sure that what we are looking at now, though it doesn't look anything like the grandeur of a palace of King Herod from 2,000 years ago, is the site of King's Herod Palace. Actually, it's a little bit further up to the north. We're hoping someday to be able to dig under there. We've done some digging at the northern end, where we first climbed up the spiral staircase, the area known as the Kishida, and found remnants of Herod's palace. And maybe even someday we'll get under the Armenian Quarter to discover more of the magnificent palace, which we now know sat at this spot beautifully in view from where we're standing on the southwestern corner.
To do with this view looking to the south. In the distance, by the way, on the hills are the hills of Hebron, the area known as Gush Etzion. Much closer in, on the right side of the road that we see ascending from the valley, the modern Menachem Begin Center, behind it the Scottish Hospice, and across the street from the Begin Center, a hotel known as the Mount Zion Hotel. The Mount Zion Hotel was, back in 1948, the site of an amazing endeavor by engineers of the Israeli army who had soldiers on this side of the valley, but Jordanian soldiers up here on this corner of the wall.
The dilemma that we faced back in May 1948, after the walls of the Old City fell into the hands of the Jordanians, that Israel was on the right side of the valley, where the Mount Zion Hotel is, but we also held on to Mount Zion on the left side of the valley, but the access in between was very difficult, because who was sitting up here? Jordanian Legion. And so Israeli engineers came up with an idea to build a secret cable car stretching from one end of the valley, where the Mount Zion Hotel is today, to the Israeli soldiers on Mount Zion, operated secretly at night. It is the source of another story that we will tell in one of our future trips, but a fascinating, fascinating story of Israeli ingenuity confronting a problem and solving it. The cable car was actually built in secret, run in secret, and kept a secret until well after the Six-Day War of 1967, some 20 years later. And the third thing from this southwest corner, the Dormition Abbey on Mount Zion, according to Christianity, the site of the Last Supper of Jesus, and the large cemetery built around the Abbey, which is a holy spot to Christians. It was the site of the final, very poignant and moving scene in Steven Spielberg's movie about Oskar Schindler. Oskar Schindler, who rescued thousands of Jews in the Holocaust, is remembered at the Israeli National Holocaust Memorial Yad Vashem as a righteous Gentile, and who was buried in the Catholic section of the cemetery beneath us. You might recall the last scene of the movie when the actors who played the roles in the movie, along with the person that they portrayed, the 60-year gap between them, walked in pairs to the grave of Schindler and put a stone on his grave in that very, very moving scene. For those of you familiar with Jerusalem, those of you who have visited in the past, you recognize the scene below us when you come in through Jaffa Gate and walk along the street past the Armenian Quarter on your way towards the Western Wall and the Jewish Quarter. This is the street that you walk on, coming to the end and turning a left here at the southwest corner, and that's what we've just done as we continue our walk along the ramparts of the old walls. Moving along, let's continue to the top of Zion Gate. We're walking along what's known as the southern route from the Jaffa Gate, where we climbed up, towards the south, now heading east along the walls, over the Zion Gate, and continuing down to the area of the Western Wall. Behind us, the spectacular view of the old city, the Armenian Quarter, the Jewish Quarter, looking east towards the Mount of Olives. Let's look at this amazing panorama together. First of all, in one shot, 3 domes representing the 3 religions all consider Jerusalem holy. Dead center, the White Dome, is the reconstructed core of the synagogue, destroyed in its most recent destruction of the War of Independence and now rebuilt. Of course, on the right, the Gold Dome, on the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, and the steeple in the middle is in the heart of the Christian Quarter, all of Jerusalem unfolding before our eyes from this one spot. On the horizon, the modern buildings on the left side of the view are the neighborhood of French Hill. Moving along, the campus of Hebrew University, built in 1925, abandoned in 1948 when the area in between the campus and the rest of Jerusalem fell into Jordanian hands. And so we maintained a military position there for the 19 years when we couldn't get there. And of course in 1967, when the city was liberated, and the campus was once again reunited with the rest of Jerusalem and rebuilt and refurbished, and today functions as one of the 2 campuses of Hebrew University. Mount of Olives, the ancient Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives, and all the way down below, the area where Jerusalem began 3,000 years ago, the ancient city of David, another subject for one of our Tiyulim. Wow, and about 5 days a year, it's actually clear enough to see the hills of Jordan on the other side of the Jordan Valley, now looking dead east. Those in the Bible are known as the hills of Moab. It's where Moses stood when he looked upon the promised land, unable to enter. And it's where the story of Ruth takes place, just on the other side of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, about 12 miles from where we are right now. Too bad that we can't see it because of the haze. Well, we've come to the end, and what I hope you felt was an enjoyable walk on the walls of Jerusalem. Maybe one of these days we'll go the other direction on the northern route with different things to see, but the southern route brings us here as we head towards the east with another spectacular view of the Jewish Quarter of the old city below us. If we were to continue in this direction, we would come to an exit which would take us down towards the Western Wall and the Temple Mount, which you can see in the background, and an exciting way to get a beautiful, beautiful panoramic view over this magnificent city, the city of Jerusalem.
Okay.
So, go David. Yeah, did you enjoy it? Thank you all. So it's interesting because I just want to give you a little bit of background where all of this is coming from now. We're a number of tour guides, actually 3 of us that partnered together when we saw the tourism business collapse last April and May, and we established a website. This is actually the 3rd or the 4th video that we did for the website. We were still learning then, and we're posting 1 a week of videos of different places around Israel. So that was we opened, I think our first video went up on September 1st, this past Thursday, because we put up one a week. We just posted our 30th video to the website. We've gotten better. I mean, this one had some sound problems and we learned how to handle the sound, and you could see the editing is done professionally. It's taken to a professional editor. So we've, looking for a way to bring people who would love to be here, but can't, giving them a way to get here. So we've created the site and the videos that we're going to be showing over our series in the TBA series of Sundays. I think the next one's the 11th of April, and then we have a date set for May 2nd. Will be other videos from the site with additional material that I will add, like I did this evening or to you this afternoon, in a PowerPoint. And so why don't we open? Let's everybody unmute yourselves. Any comments or any questions or any thoughts to share, please, on our walk on the ramparts on the wall. How many of you have ever walked the ramparts, by the way? Anybody ever do it before? Go, David. Okay, Eva, I see you have as well. Wonderful.
I did it before there were railings.
Oh, no. So I would not have done it probably, Phil. You're a better man than I. As I mentioned in the video, I really do not like, I don't like stairs. I don't like heights, but I can handle it with the railings. Wow, that's really brave of you. Any questions, any thoughts, any?
Just want to say thank you for this big treat. I haven't been in Israel for a few years now, and it was just great to revisit very familiar places.
Thank you, Eve. Of course, the people to thank are Marla and Phil, your adult
That's
education.
And our Israel committee, including the rabbi.
And your Israel committee and rabbi. And you know what? We're actually talking, God willing, when things open up again. So maybe we can get TBA to actually come over here and do these things for real. I'm not sure how many of us are going to climb ramparts anymore, but there's a lot to do. And in the meantime, we're pleased to be able to bring it to you virtually in this way. So again, thanks to your Israel committee and to Phil and Marla.
Well,
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
I like to say that I found the maps and your drawing of the different boundaries made for a much better picture of what went on over the centuries and how it affected Jerusalem. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I do have one question. When the Crusaders built the wall, initially rebuilt their wall, why didn't they include what I guess was the southern part of the city, the part that had been originally in the greater Old Jerusalem? Do we know?
So, I don't know. David, right, is asking?
Yeah.
So I don't know that we actually definitively know for sure. My guess is that they went along with topography, and that to include that southern section was a very involved technical endeavor, which the Crusaders did not want to get into. And so they stayed with a line kind of like on a ridge where it was much easier to build without a huge dip into a valley. It's interesting, though, some of you might remember that when you come into Jaffa Gate, there's like a little alcove on the left-hand side, and there are two Muslim graves on the left there.
Yeah.
Okay, they're right there by the Tourist Information Center. So the story behind it, which is apocryphal, I don't know that it's ever been 1,000% confirmed that this is the actual truth. But the story is that 500 years after the Crusaders, when the walls were now being rebuilt by the Turks, that Suleiman, who commissioned the building of the walls, came and he saw that southern section that you're asking about, David, was not included by the engineers, and he had the two engineers executed for not including that section and for building along the Crusader lines instead of the more ancient original lines. And those are the two graves that we see in that tiny little alcove part right by the entrance. But evidently Suleiman was upset that section was not included. And
that's a great story. Thank you.
Isn't it? Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, I always found it fascinating. When we say Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, right? Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah Udevar Adonai Yerushalayim. First of all, it's part of the magic that I spoke about earlier on, right? I mean, we have these constant reminders in our observant life of our connection with Jerusalem. And in this case, the word Zion, they're actually two separate mountains, Mount Moriah and Mount Zion. Mount Zion today is also outside of the walls. It was originally within the walls, if you can picture those maps. And the city of David, which is the original Zion, is outside the walls of Jerusalem today. Yet nevertheless, I think conceptually, we kind of consider the old city, the city of David, Mount Zion, all being part of the ancient Jerusalem. And of course, in the last 150 years, all the new stuff. 150 years ago, none of that existed, as you know. It's all the growth of the last 1860s at the earliest, what, 120 years, maybe 160 years maybe now. But great question, David.
Thank you.
So when we're done, we're gonna share the Jerusalem lights.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about it. Wow, it's been a long day for me already. So I have a special treat. Thank you so much, Marla. It's funny, in the last, who asked me today? Oh, Joe on the phone, right? A fellow guide. We've now, I mean, thank God the website is beginning to be, kind of like where we had hoped it would be. And I'm able to engage other guides to do these trips. Up until now, of the original 30, either my partner Ani or I have done 20 out of the 30. And we've begun now to be able to bring income into other guides' hands. So one of the guides asked me, how do you choose what to do? So a lot of it, we're kind of like planning way out in advance. About 3 weeks ago, I saw an ad in the paper. It was before, not Hanukkah, right? It was before Purim, right? And the city of Jerusalem, and I didn't know anything about it. I just saw it in the Jerusalem Post, like about 2 weeks before Purim, had lit up the city of Jerusalem. There was a light festival for like 10 days over the city of Jerusalem. And I called Ani and I said, and it was during closure, or it was just on the eve of closure, right, Debbie? Yeah, they were closing on Friday, right? the last closure. And I saw this the previous weekend, and it started on Wednesday. So Wednesday night, Debbie and I got in the car. We drove to Jerusalem. We're about 20 minutes out of Jerusalem. And we filmed what you're about to see, the Light Festival. So maybe that's why I was thinking of Hanukkah, because we think of Hanukkah as the festival of lights. And I even mentioned it at the beginning of the video. But we're going to end today's presentation with a film. And that was totally spontaneous and unplanned. We said, wow, this is amazing. Let's do it. And so what we're going to see to end today, since we had talked about Jerusalem, is this light festival in the city of Jerusalem just 3 weeks ago. It lasted only 10 days, 6 of which were under closure. So most people couldn't get there because of the rain, and then it rained. So we were really lucky that we got there on a clear night, and when we were able to see it. And I'm going to enjoy with you now and invite you to enjoy with us the views of Jerusalem just 2 weeks ago on the Jerusalem Light Festival. This was the video that went up to our site just 2 weeks ago. So enjoy. And then Marla, you want to say something about the 11th, or Phil? Because I think that's our next scheduled time is the 11th.
Yes, we are meeting again for the 11th. Is the 11th Caesarea? Did we decide even? We're going to see yet another video, and we hope you'll join us. Feel free to bring more tourists to our little screen. And at the end of everything, we have a little special gift for everyone at the end. So to keep you wanting more and to satisfy you a little bit.
So anyway, so I will actually officially say goodnight, because it's a pleasure meeting all of you and being with you this evening or this afternoon in New York. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks on April 11th. So let's now join together and see Jerusalem Light Festival from just a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. And by the way, the narration, in this case, the narration was narration that we basically took from the website. You went around with an app and they narrated the spots as you went around. So we are kind of reading the narrations from the app. Okay, go for it. Pesach Sameach, happy Passover, everybody. See you in a few weeks.
As the Festival of Light. But this year, in the spring of 2021, the Ministry of Tourism and the Jerusalem Development Authority and a number of other groups have come together to also make the holiday of Purim a festival of light. In the words of the Jerusalem Follow the Light website, it's a breathtaking and exciting project that brings back the light into our difficult COVID-raged times. After months at home, enjoy a brightly and colorfully illuminated Jerusalem in a safe way from the comfortable convenience of your car, or in your case, from the comfortable convenience of your living room, while adhering to all the public health measures. Join us on a tour of dozens of iconic landmarks, continues the website, historical and modern, illuminated and turned into works of art, revealing hidden gems, offering new perspectives. My name is Peter Abelow.
Hi, I'm Ani Schiffmiller.
Hi, I'm Donnie Abelow.
We are tour guides and Israel educators.
And each week, one of us, or one of our colleagues, will be presenting
A real taste of Israel as we take you with us on our journey around the country.
Israel is beautiful.
I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the following verse in our daily prayer book. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, v'nizkeh kulanu mehera la'oro. May you shine a new light unto Zion, we pray, and may we all be privileged speedily to merit in its light. With these words in mind, the new light over Zion, please join Ani and me on our journey around Jerusalem, following the lights.
Gesher HaMeitorim, or as it's known in English, the String Bridge, has welcomed people to the entrance of Jerusalem since its inauguration in 2008. It was designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava, and whether you walk over it or take the light rail across or drive underneath, you can't help but appreciate its magnificence. It's made up of strings, and there's a reason for that. Jerusalem became the united capital of Israel under King David, and King David played the harp, and so we always want to remember him when we come into the city.
The Knesset, or Israel's parliament, is named for the supreme institution of the sages of Israel during the period of the return to Zion, Shivat Zion, over 2,000 years ago. The first session of the Knesset was convened on Tu B'Shvat in the winter of 1949 in Jerusalem, but due to its closeness to the Jordanian front, migrated to Tel Aviv, where it held its discussions at the Kesem Cinema near the beach. The design of the current building near the government complex was awarded to the architects Dov and Ram Karmi in a competition in 1955. The building was inaugurated in an impressive ceremony in August 1966 in the presence of dozens of delegations from Israel and abroad.
While many of us visit the Israel Museum in Jerusalem to see its vast collection of archaeology, the museum embraced art in motion as a great idea for displaying works to people who would be seeing the site by car. And what did they do? They took dozens of works of art and displayed them using video screens and projections in their parking lot. You can actually drive along and through different art installations. What a great idea. It's so much fun to see the light projected on the cubes of Jerusalem's Israel Museum. The iconic architecture had a purpose. It was designed so that the museum could expand as its collections grew. And let me tell you a little bit about the nearby Rehavia neighborhood. It's a lovely residential neighborhood established in the 1920s on land of the Greek Orthodox Church. It has beautiful limestone buildings, charming cafes, and really lovely stores.
The Shrine of the Book on the campus of the Israel Museum is home of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Thousands of visitors flock each year to see the amazing remnants of biblical text first discovered along the shores of the Dead Sea in a place called Qumran in the fall of 1947. These documents, many of them dating over 2,000 years old, are the first written biblical text that we have.
The Rabin Tunnel is named for former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and it's adjacent to the Knesset, our parliament. If you drive in the tunnel, you'll notice little niches with lions. Why lions? Well, Jerusalem is part of the biblical land of the tribe of Judah. And when Jacob dies and he blesses his sons, Judah is blessed as being strong like the lion. Did you figure out how many lions are in the tunnel? I'll give you the answer. It's 34.
The artistic illuminations on this section of the bike path are unique lighting sculptures in the form of bicycles, transforming real bicycles as elements designed in light. Placed on the street lamp poles, they become the visible illuminated signs of the eco-friendly transformation of the city of Jerusalem. The bike path stretches over many kilometers in the city and allows fun and continuous riding between the main neighborhoods and important centers in the city. This newly created network of eco-friendly routes encourages residents to enjoy different means of transportation and outdoor activities, do sports by riding or walking at all hours of the day, maintain health and fitness, and discover new places in the city of Jerusalem.
The Mount Zion Hotel was originally founded as an eye hospital, St. John Hospital, back in 1882. And this hotel has a special secret dating back to the War of Independence. Did you know that there was a cable car that ran from here across the Ben Hinnom Valley to positions held on Mount Zion? That's right, it would ferry soldiers across the valley when they needed it. It only worked at night so that the enemy couldn't see what was happening. You can visit the cable car today, and in the meantime, enjoy the building all lit up.
The facade of the Crown Plaza Hotel is a canvas for colorful light paintings. A small white light grows larger to a rhythmic dance of colors that covers the building and fills it with endless animation of color and light. The hotel, located near the government quarter, was built in 1973 and rises to a height of 95 meters with its 21 floors. The hotel used to be the tallest landmark in the city, although it was superseded by Tower Number 1 of the Holy Land project. Still, even holding the rank of the second highest building, its placement on one of the highest spots of the city, right near its entrance, makes it a highly visible and prominent landmark in the skyline of Jerusalem.
In English, it's known as the Monster Slide, but in Hebrew, we call this famous slide the Golem, and it's part of a park in Jerusalem's Kiryat HaYovel neighborhood. It's probably the most famous park in all of Jerusalem, and every Jerusalem kid begs his parents to come slide on the Golem. We hope you enjoy. Just so you know, this isn't the only light show in Jerusalem. Every June, the old city is lit up. The Muslim quarter, the Armenian quarter, the Jewish quarter, and the Christian quarter all have wonderful light installations. We wanted to show you the walls of Jerusalem as they looked 2 summers ago. All the different color stones represent the many, many times the walls were broken and rebuilt, and we hope that they will stay rebuilt forever.
This is not the only time that the city has come alive and the walls and buildings have been lit up in a spectacular way as we've just witnessed today. I'm sure some of you have noticed that we've decided to include some video of the Yom Yerushalayim Jerusalem Day celebrations of a number of years ago, when there was a spectacular light and sound show against the walls of the old city, culminating in the fireworks, which you just saw. Ani and I, and Israel is Beautiful, have really enjoyed bringing Jerusalem Follow the Lights into your homes, even though you're thousands of miles away from Jerusalem. Please don't forget to open this week's IDZ Family Activity Sheet, the Israel Discovery Zone, in which you will learn many new exciting things about Jerusalem and engage in some of the fun things that Tali Kaplinsky-Tarlow has created for us this week.
That was great.
Okay, everybody.
Lovely.
Ugh. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a fun evening doing that. We were kind of driving around and it was just really spectacular and fun.
Laurel and I showed it to our students and they loved it, right?
They did. They asked questions. They were really excited.
And a bunch
Wow.
of them actually did the activity.
Yes,
Thing.
Oh,
So it's
great.
exciting.
Good.
yes.
Wonderful.
So what
Nice.
was your favorite light show?
Is that Debbie and me?
Nope, I'm asking the whole
Oh,
group.
group. Okay, guys. Any favorites?
And then you.
Oh, I
I'd
like
never
the
seen
walls.
Yeah, the walls. I had never seen the bridge lit up like that.
That was a very popular love of the kids too. It really did look like a harp. You could see that, you know, and with it was just beautiful.
A lot of ingenuity and talent went into that. And the idea of the bicycles also,
Oh, that was my favorite. I love that.
very clever.
It was just, and they were real bikes too. That was just,
Right.
Amazing.
How
Okay,
was that received in
much for this
Israel?
treat.
And is there any talk of it being done on a more regular basis?
You know, I think there was some disappointment because of the 10 days. Part of it was under closure. Part of it was under rain. It was raining, and there was some strong requests to extend it. But they,
You would think.
but you know, I don't know. They didn't. It's interesting, by the way, the shots of the walls themselves with the lions and the white lights. That's current. That was this festival. The only piece that was from 2 years ago was the piece at the end with all the crowds and the fireworks. So it was a combination. I don't know if we made that clear enough in the narration, but that section of the walls with the walls kind of crumbling and all that, that was that was this festival here. It was only that very last piece, which was the 2-year piece. But I thought I had it on my camera. Everybody have phones with your cameras, right? Remember the days when you used to have cameras and phones and they were not the same thing? So I had that on my phone from a couple of years ago. And I said, wow, you know, this really kind of fits. Let's put it in. I told sent it off to the video editor and say, here, put this in too. And we'll kind of narrate it in. I agree, by the way. I love the harp at the strings at the beginning. I thought we kind of stood there for a while, just kind of mesmerized by the flow of colors across the strings. But the whole city was beautiful. I mean, there were trees lit up, and we didn't include all the buildings. There were other buildings that were lit up, and what's nice about it is because given the restrictions of COVID and the fears of COVID, people were just driving around in our cars. I mean, everybody was kind of safe in your own car. And I think that's what really made it special. It was a creative way of getting people to enjoy the light of Jerusalem and not feeling that you had to leave your car to take pictures, which compromised the quality of the pictures a little bit because we were not allowed to get out of our cars. But it was, I thought it was a great thing, and people, it was received really well. I mean, people, as the word spread about it, people wanted to try to get out to see it. So it was nice. And I'm glad to be able to share it with you and share it with our viewers on our website. So.
Toda rabba.
yes.
Bevakasha, with pleasure, besimcha. So once again, happy Passover to everybody. Chag kasher v'sameach.
Chag Shem Shemeach.
And we'll see you, I guess it's in 3 weeks, right? Wow, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Peter, get some sleep. Laila tov to you, and good afternoon to everyone else.
צהריים טובים לכולם.
צהריים
Thank
טובים.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, especially Marla and Phil and Peter.
Great job.
Pleasure.
You're welcome.